For years, the question has been asked, researched, tested, and tried. Can it be done? Can it be done? Can you make a short film with your smartphone? The answer is yes. You can. You can do it. We're going to talk about that now.
What's up, homies? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nate Killian, and on this channel I talk a lot about short films, comedy skits. I even make a few of my own, along with tutorials, and I drop the occasional vlog. So if any of that interests you, would love for you to consider subscribing to the channel. And if this isn't your first time here, that's pretty dope. So today I'm going to be giving you six different tips for making a short film or a comedy skit with your phone. Yes, phone filmmaking, it can be done. And like I've said in many of my other videos, a lot of people do this. Many film festivals now are even offering a mobile phone film category that people can submit to. So this is definitely becoming more and more common to filmmakers everywhere. So my goal with this video is to provide you a couple tips and tricks for when you decide to make a short film with your phone to A, get the most out of your phone, and B, help you get your short film to look as film-like as possible. And here's a quick little disclaimer. The tips that I'm giving you are based on newer models of smartphones. You can definitely use some of these tips and apply them to older models, but I really just want you guys to be aware of what your phone is capable of, because that might change how much some of these tips are applicable to you. And another quick disclaimer is that some of these tips are really just general filmmaking tactics that you should use regardless of whatever camera that you're using. So without further ado, grab your phone, take some notes, and let's get into it. Tip number one, adjust your video capture settings. I have an iPhone XS, for example, and I always make this change before I ever film anything with my phone, and that is that I change my video capture settings to 4K at 24 frames per second. 24 frames per second is the standard frame rate for filmmaking. Typically, the only times you'll see like 30 frames per second is when you're watching like live television or some sort of stream. And then the only times you really see anything higher than that is for streaming like video games on Twitch, or if you plan on using slow motion in your films. And when you look at these three different frame rates, you can see the difference. The 24 looks a little choppier, I guess you could say, compared to the 30 and then the 60 frames per second. And just be aware, if you are shooting in 4K at 24 frames per second, it's going to take up more space on your phone, so just something to be aware of. Tip number two, try to get that camera as close as possible to your subject. So while you're using your phone, you may notice that when you take a wider shot, it looks a little boring and flat, just very much not as cinematic as one would hope. The new phone cameras are actually really good at pulling focus on subjects that are close to them. So when it pulls focus on your subject that's close up, it actually ends up creating that blurry cinematic background. It's called bokeh or bokeh, and just overall makes your footage look a little more aesthetic. Let's use this video that I took in my kitchen as an example. Hypothetically, let's say that my subject in this shot is these cool looking bulb planter things. The wide shot doesn't really look that cinematic. You can kind of tell like I took this with my phone. But when I move my camera closer to the planter, you can see that the planter becomes obviously in focus and the background becomes way more blurry, just making the shot look a little more aesthetic. And of course, you're probably not only going to use close-up shots when you're making this short film. I mean, you could if you were like really creative. But most of the time you probably will use other shots, but it's just a constraint to be aware of, because if you're aware of it, you can work around it. Tip number three, use the rule of thirds. Here is how Adobe defines the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a composition guideline that places your subject in the left or the right third of an image, leaving the other 2/3 more open. While there are other forms of composition, the rule of thirds generally leads to compelling and well-composed shots. pretty good definition. If you watch any movie or TV show, you're gonna notice that filmmakers use the rule of thirds for pretty much everything. Now, I highly recommend that you check out a tutorial on the rule of thirds to learn more about it, how to use it, when to use it, all the different ways that you can use it. We don't have time for that in this video to talk about it, but what you can do to help you use the rule of thirds is turning on the grid on your phone. By turning on these grid lines on your phone, they're just gonna help you utilize the rule of thirds as you're filming. And this will just add one other cinematic element to your short film. All right, number 4, audio. So if you're filming and you're using just the built-in phone microphone as your audio, chances are is that it's not gonna be that great. Now, your audio would sound better if you had a second audio source that was closer to your subject. And one way that you can do this is by actually using a second phone. Take that second phone and place it or hide it closer to your subject in the shot. On the second phone, use voice memos or voice recorder, whatever app the phone has. Open that up, roll the audio, roll the camera, and shoot your scene. And what you can do is sync up that audio in post-production. Or if you don't want to do that, another thing that you can do is you can buy one of these really cheap lav mics off of Amazon and plug that into your phone, clip it onto your subject, and now you already have better audio. Whatever your audio source is, get it as close to your subject as possible. All right, number 5. That's 10. Number 5, editing. Now, there are plenty of editing softwares that I've seen in the App Store that you can download. Now, some of the ones that I've seen are ones like iMovie. I'm pretty sure that comes free if you have an iPhone, Splice, or what I would suggest is Adobe Rush. Now, if you're not gonna edit with your phone, which I don't recommend doing anyways because you'd be editing everything like this and it kind of is just really hard and, thumbs and stuff. But if you're editing with a laptop or a computer, here are some really easy tips that you can do to make your footage look more like a short film. Why am I talking like this? First is changing the aspect ratio of what you shot. I do this for all of my shorts, but one thing that you can do to make your phone footage look a little more cinematic is adding those black bars on the top and the bottom of your footage. This is called letterboxing. I actually have a full tutorial on how to letterbox your films. I'm gonna put it up here in the corner and you can check that out and learn how to letterbox your films. Second is color correction. Phone footage tends to be really punchy with its colors. So what I tend to do is I actually just drop down the contrast a little bit on my footage and then I color correct it how I typically would color correct any other footage. A simple way to color correct, and what some might call the lazy man's color correction. Drop the contrast, up your highlights, bring down your shadows, and then in a separate layer, drop a LUT on top of that. If you don't know what a LUT is, it's basically like an Instagram filter for your footage. And yeah, some might call that lazy, like I said, but if it gets the job done, we're in business, baby. Moving on. And this is my last tip, number 6. I kind of feel like I don't really need to say this one, but I'm gonna anyways. Flip that phone landscape, people. You can obviously shoot things in the portrait perspective on your phone, but if you're trying to shoot something like a short film to make it look like a short film, hold it landscape. You'll have more to work with anyways. So guys, those are 6 different tips that you can use to enhance your phone filmmaking experience. Now, I'm sure there are way more tips and tricks that you can use to make this even better, but those are 6 tips that you can do right now without even really buying anything or getting extra equipment to start making a short film with your phone. If you have any questions about how to make a short film with your phone, toss those in the comments and I'll do my absolute best to answer them the best that I can and get back to you. If you like this video or found it helpful, give it a like because believe it or not, it actually helps me and the channel and it lets me know that you'd like to see more content like this in the future. And if you haven't already, would love for you to consider subscribing to the channel because like I said, that'd be pretty dope. So my name's Nate Killian. Thanks again. Keep telling stories and I'll see you in the next video.